actually we'd known each other, had a mutual friend, didn't know each other real well, and he came out of the Mill Valley Film Festival where he saw a terrific documentary, of course I'm very biased, called Ed Hardy Tattooed the World, done by Emiko Mori and Wendy Slick. Wendy's a Marinite, Emiko's from San Francisco. It's a documentary that's now streaming on Netflix. It's available as a DVD. It came out about 2010. And Joel came out of the film and said, wow, you've had a really unusual life. We could do a hell of a book. And I knew he had the chops and the connections in New York. He'd done a lot of best-selling things on people in the various avenues of the music industry. So we started working on this. In the last 2 years, we really, applied ourselves and got this done. The publisher's been very, very enthusiastic about it, and it gave me a chance to tell a lot of stories that things that have been, brought me along over the years. So it's really a great honor to do this. I do, excuse me, I've written and published a lot of things. We've done about 30 books under our Hardy Marks imprint, starting with the first Tattoo magazine in 1982. But it's really great to be able to have a venue and a platform in a legitimate, publishing house and terrific bookstores all over the country. Yes, I did start tattooing, drawing tattoos on when I was 10 years old via the tattoos that my best friend's dad had from World War II. And I became really fascinated with them, and I already was obsessed with drawing and knew that's what I wanted to do with my life. And I pursued that for a few years and visited tattoo shops in Long Beach. I was raised down in coastal Orange County. And then, was too young to do them or get real tattoos, so I drifted into other things. Eventually ending up at the San Francisco Art Institute in the early 60s. I got my undergraduate degree in printmaking, pretty classical art education. And toward the end of that, I was poised to go to grad school and was accepted for an assistantship to Yale on a pretty good career track. And the idea was you get an MFA and then get a job teaching art somewhere. In those days in the 60s, it was easy. It was like a piece of cake to get hired that way. Not as much competition. But I re-encountered the tattoo world via a really interesting renegade intellectual tattooer in Oakland, Phil Sparrow. His actual name was Samuel Stewart. He was part of Gertrude Stein's circle. An amazing, amazing person. He was a closeted guy from Ohio who eventually got into the tattoo world. He knew Kinsey. He was connected with all kinds of people. He got into tattooing as a really interesting subculture thing that he saw as a dying folk art. And it let him break free of academia and the sort of, small-mindedness that was existing in Middle America in a lot of places in those days. And he came out to San Francisco, to the Bay Area eventually. So Phil was my first role model as a tattooer that really had a profound and complex life outside of the observable thing in the tattoo parlor. And that gave me the courage to, I thought, well, you could go into this and have a really interesting life and not just be part of street culture. So that's how it went, and I proceeded from there to open my own shop eventually, and then work up and down the coast, and then travel to Japan via the introduction to a Japanese tattoo master, via Sailor Jerry, who was a great tattooer, Sailor Jerry Collins in Honolulu, who became my primary mentor in this field the 4 years before he died. And Jerry was the primary guy that was capable of really transforming the medium into something much, much more expressive, much more subtle and developed. And we shared a passion for classical Asian art and aesthetics and philosophy. And along with about 4 or 5 other tattooers, that's about all there were that were interested in pushing the envelope, and we kind of moved it along. But I was able to go to Japan, got an introduction to a tattoo master, and he agreed to let me come over and work. So went to Japan in 1973, and along with, went over initially alone, and my wife Francesca Pasolacqua, we were already together before that, but I didn't know, I was set on going to Japan, we didn't know what was going to happen, but she joined me a month after I got there, and we had some incredible adventures. Living there as the only non-Japanese we saw during the whole period we were there, and it was a small town by Japanese standards, and an extremely insular world that was pretty much, a lot of it was made up of Yakuza, of the Japanese underworld, was tattooing had been demoted to that culture after it's the official government in Japan in the mid to late 19th century forbade all Japanese citizens to be tattooed. But it was Japanese tattooing that kind of inspired everyone in the West and had a lot of effect on the tattoo culture that did develop in the late 19th century in America and Europe, and London especially, where a lot of wealthy, titled people that were able to travel to Japan, this fantastic world that had been completely closed off for hundreds of years. People went over there and were astounded at what they saw, and of course it kicked off all sorts of things, Impressionism and Art Nouveau and Frank Lloyd Wright and arts and crafts, and the Japanese culture had an incalculable effect on the world at large in those days. Tattooing was a remnant of it because a lot of people that visited Japan had souvenir tattoos. Being foreigners, non-natives, they could get tattoos from some of the great masters there. And Longfellow's son had elaborate tattoos and lived there for a long time. There's a terrific book about that, the name of which escapes me at the moment, but if you Google it, you would find it. It might even be called Longfellow's tattoos. Pretty amazing. These sort of Brahmin youths from Boston high society embracing the exoticism of the East and going over there, living and getting tattoos. And there's my co-author.
There it is.
Mr. Joel Selvin.
Anybody else notice any traffic out there?
Whoa, yeah, everybody was stuck.
Well, what have you been saying?
Well, you gave a short summary of some of the main points. Childhood tattooing, the art school, Phil Sparrow, Japanese stuff, Sailor Jerry, little bits and pieces. I haven't told any of the really good stuff. You've got the great. He sets up the shots, and then I try to sing. That's how we run. And we've honed this. We started in New York last Monday, and we've just been ping-ponging around. Just came off a run in LA, but had a lot of fun down there. And it's been a great pleasure working with Joel. And I never would have been able to, conceive of this thing or pull it off without a guy that really, really writes and really knows how to make things happen. And it is a terrific tag team thing here, and I'm very grateful about the whole deal. And we have a lot of fun too.
Yeah. Yeah, this has been very lucky for me as a writer to meet Ed and to be the guy that was able to pick this up off the table, because it's been sitting there for a long time. I don't know really how other guys didn't beat me there, but there I am. And this is this is my first step as a writer outside the world of popular music. It's interesting. I think, tattoos down in the basement, sort of down the hall.
Yeah.
From rock and roll.
Yeah. It's related. Yeah. It's skin music. Right?
But I came to admire Ed's story as one of the great art heroes of our time, and the book, which I'm just inordinately proud of, given that my contribution is so minimal, that it's really not about Ed's life. It's a story of the modern tattoo. And golly, haven't we all wondered how that happened? Just the other day, nobody was tattooed. Now everybody is. Well, we were in New York, and it was some hot weather. It was just amazing, wasn't it?
Astounding, yeah. It's more there than even we see out here. It was pretty. I can't even really wrap my head around how much it's grown. It's fantastic. So that's what happened. Gee.
Yeah, and Ed's fingerprints are on every part of that. You just can't find an area where this thing started to unfold that Ed's fingerprints and handwork isn't in there. Whether it's the Japanese style epic pieces or the tribal tattoos. I just think that's so funny. These anthropological tattoos that you guys made up. And all the Hawaiians think it's their connection to their ancestors.
It was done in those days, but we just sort of ran with it. A group of us, as I said, a few other tattooers my age, and Sailor Jerry, we just took these things and just tried to expand it. To me, it was a thing of sort of social liberation, because in the '60s, as many of you know, we were working really diligently here to, especially the Bay Area, to try to get things liberated for people, that if they were living their lives in a positive way, they weren't bothering other people, they should be able to live that way, and to break down all the structures of, repressive society and the anti-fun league, we used to call it. And so it just was a way to loosen things up. If people wanted to get tattoos, I always say, I don't know why people get them. It's like, why do you make art? You don't know why. That's part of it's a mystery. But they appeal to a lot of people. It fits in with a lot of our species. And if they wanted to get tattoos, I thought it was completely wrong that it was just restricted to that one thing. You go in a tattoo shop, and that's what we're offering. It's absurd. So it just opened things up all the way around, and it's been pretty amazing.
I just also find it fabulously perfect that this tattoo thing that Ed emanated was coming out of San Francisco in 1967. Just nobody really traced it back there before. As when Ed graduated from the SF Arts Institute, he was throwing mail down in Rincon Annex next to Tiff Garcia's brother was playing around town in some band.
Yeah, that's it. I know that. Yeah.
So all these things are circling around at the same time, and what he's saying about how the social underpinnings of his work, it's not isolated. He was part of this whole San Francisco in the 60s thing. It's just not widely credited for that. But he doesn't look like a hippie, does he?
That wasn't my style. I never was into that. I was partial to the beats, and I just never. I was living here when the whole hate thing happened. It was interesting, but it wasn't my style.
Well, you sampled it.
Yeah.
Danced at the Fillmore, dropped acid.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's how you graduate. The undergraduate work, that was done in San Francisco, and for a few years on other places. But the thing is too, it's just, I think that I consider myself extremely fortunate all the way around. I had this incredible life, thanks to all these mentors, people that put up with me and helped me along in different walks of life. And some of them, and not all of them are people I encountered live. And I'm completely obsessed with art history. It's still my big passion. And all the great artists of the past that illuminated me and lit my head up and gave me the energy to move forward and try to do something. It's an amazing thing to be like in California. I think mid-20th century California centric, because all these cultural currents that came out and eventually influenced the whole world, from surf culture, the beach sensibility, the custom car thing, and then the literature, the beat literature, and then the hippie thing, everything else. It was really, I am a real California booster. I love a lot of other places, but this place had a particular vibe that was just possible in those days because there was nothing to lose. Like, as many of you know, the fine art scene, a lot of people are very famous now. Ed Ruscha and all these people centered in LA. I was fortunate enough when I got really serious about art when I was about 16, I started going to the galleries in La Cienega and seeing these seminal early shows of this explosive, really, really unusual art that none of those people had they weren't strategizing for any kind of industry. And New York is snotty about the West Coast. They're trying to catch up as far as I'm concerned. They're standing there looking at Europe, and all of us in California are looking at the Pacific. We're looking out at Asia. And so people took a lot more risks, and that sort of sensibility has come a long way. But it was good timing. I had nothing to do with it. It's like, bang, I showed up here and tried to roll with it, and it just keeps going.
Yeah. Ed's so highbrow, isn't he? It's almost surprising. But tell him about Dr. Fukushi and his father. That'll.
Oh yeah, that was part of the Japanese adventures. Before I went to Japan, there was a famous or infamous collection of tattooed skins that are at a museum at the
University of Tokyo.
University of Tokyo Medical Center. And it's there. It's not public display or anything. And it was featured in a Life magazine article just post-war. And everyone was like, "Oh my God, tattooed skins in Japan." And there was all this talk about, do they sell them or how do they? get this stuff. And it was a case of a doctor whose specialty, I think, was cancer research, and a lot of his patients were downtown people that happened to have tattoos. Maybe not all yakuza, a lot of them were just from working class people. And the story is that they bemoaned the fact that they spent their lives collecting this incredible art, and it was going to disappear when they did. And so he figured out a way to like preserve their skins, and his son took up the field, and the son, the younger Dr. Fukushi, I don't know when the elder Fukushi died, but that article was from probably late 1940s or maybe about 1950. But anyway, the younger Dr. Fukushi had heard about me within the sort of tattoo underground communications of people really interested in this. He and his wife were doing a tour of America, came to my studio in San Francisco, my private studio, and his wife spoke excellent English. And I was just poised to go back to Japan. I didn't go back for 10 years. Francesca and I lived there in '73, and then I had this trip planned for 1983. And the Fukushis came over and talked, and I was very glad to meet them. I said, yes, I'm coming to Tokyo. And I was actually going there to meet and get a large tattoo by the person that we all consider the greatest tattooist in the world. He was a very, very reclusive person that was actually part of an artistic lineage that went back to the 19th century of the Utagawa school. His father studied with a very, very famous printmaker, ukiyo-e artist. So this kind of direct connection, Horiyoshi II, Mr. Kuronuma. And I was, via a series of circumstances, I was able to get an introduction, and he said, yes, you can come and visit me, yes, I'll do a tattoo. So Fukushi, who was close with him, said, well, while you're in Tokyo, his wife was interpreting, she said, perhaps you'd like to see the wet skins. And I said, well, of course. And as Joel put it in the book, I think it's purely in scientific interest. The person's like, oh, how are we going to deal with this? But it was really interesting. And we went there and put on the lab coats and everything. And I think there's a photo in the book of us. And they have this astounding.
Did you put that on your Christmas card?
Well, I did use it as a Christmas card, but just for close friends in the tattoo business that could sort of get it. And Francesca and I have always done very unusual and unexpected holiday cards. We've been together 40 years, and we've been doing these cards. And she usually comes up with great ideas. And that year, sometimes I would do cards that were they weren't for everyone, but I said, I know certain tattooers that have enough crazy sense of humor, they would like this. And I think Fukushi disapproved a little bit because we were both posed in there with these things. So, but to my point of view, and people talk about that. Oh, would you want your skin preserved? Those are grisly relics, and I understand the interest in it. They were actually doing research on that to find out how the skin reacted. And there's things like the lymph nodes, all the black pigment, black ink congregates in your lymph nodes. But tattoos, the whole deal is that it's on a living person, and they're for this life, and people have to like that about them, I think. And people that can't deal with they either can't deal with the fact that the tattoo is going to change, as most people have a lot of trouble dealing with the fact that we do change all the way around, inside and outside. You know, they start saying, is this going to look like this? You know, when I'm older, I said, well, and you're probably not going to really look like you do now in 40 years. So, just get with it, Because I do think it's best to accept a lot of the things that there's some of those things about accept things we can change and accept what we can't change and change the things we can. So that was one of the Japanese episodes. And the connection with Mr. Kuronu was really fantastic. And he wouldn't even talk to any other Japanese tattooers. He was a very standoffish guy and hugely egotistical. He had a reason to be that way, but it was an enormous honor to sit at his feet and be, dealt with him for several years over there, and it was really, really great. I've had all these, again, it's meeting all these great people. I don't have a lot of original ideas at all, and I just have been fortunate to connect with people, like a lot of my tattooing, the large, strange, unexpected tattoo designs I've done, images, large or small, that really broke the envelope, pushed it out for this as a medium, was because I began tattooing in an appointment-only studio and would only do one-of-a-kind images and encourage people to come in with their ideas. So I was basically illustrating what they want. It's where the Wear Your Dreams card, when Joel saw that, it's on a card from about 1975, a realistic, he said, that's our book title. And, you know, I just thought it was an appropriate thing. It was pretty 70s, you know, wear your dreams. So. But it's, you know, I've just ridden these waves of interpreting things for people, and
Tell them about some of the tattoos from Realistic.
yeah, that during those years, I had had a reputation among the underground of people wanting really unique tattoos. I would have a lot of people, a lot of them, you know, businessmen in positions of great importance who were completely in the closet with their tattoos because tattoos were so looked down on in those days. And they'd come out and get large tattoos from me. And I did, one of my favorites is this hot air balloon on a guy that was an industrialist from St. Louis, and he was involved in all kinds of businesses. I think he had a bank there, and he had a few tattoos from a sort of a stint as a carnival roustabout when he was a kid. But learned about me from another tattooer, an old-time American tattooer, and he loved anything that moved. He set records on motorcycles and cars and boats and planes, and he'd set a record for crossing the English Channel in a hot air balloon. He was crazy about hot air balloons. So he commissioned a back piece of this hot air balloon, and he sent me the menu from the Concorde, which is how he went back and forth to Europe on his business trips. And there was a, I think, 18th century French engraving of the Montgolfier brothers, hand-tinted engraving of this balloon moored in a very fancy French courtyard. So I just basically set it loose from its moorings, and it's at an angle on its back. The balloon itself is about that big. And I did that tattoo, and then the two little Montgolfier brothers with these little powdered wigs. They were little tiny portraits of these guys looking down at the landscape. And it was just so unlike anything I'd done. Of course, who would ever think of that? It was great. And it was exactly him. It's what he wanted. And in those days, I would do, my clients came from a great distance, usually. So I would do the pieces like a jigsaw puzzle, and I would tattoo a section and complete it. We worked with paper dye transfer stencils. I'd do the original drawing and then make a stencil you could imprint to get the linear part of the piece on there. But because of tattooing, once the skin's been tattooed, it's going to be sensitive. It's like a sunburn the next day. You can't go back in like an oil painting. Go, I'm going to go and put a little more black in here. It's not ethical, you know. So we did that, just building that up. And I did that one in 5 days. It was probably, I was about 20, 25 hours or something. So I would get a lot of people getting that sort of thing, and began drawing clients from around the world to other tattooers that influenced them. And the Squid Man, as we call him affectionately, Dr. Lemus from Southern California, talked to me before I went to Japan. He was aware of what I was doing. I was in San Diego then. And he wanted to have some totally unified concept for his whole body. And he couldn't decide, and I was getting ready to move to Japan. So when I got back, I reached out to him, and we did it. He decided on a giant squid that would go down just above his elbow so he could, you know, in the scrub room at the hospital, he had to keep all this under wraps. And then it went down his legs and onto two of the long, whatever those pots on the squid were on his feet. And it wasn't a solid total tattoo. It had some water around it. But that was fantastic. We just chipped away on that. He would come up from LA, and in those days that was probably started that in '74, and he came up with his partner Jack, who was had already had some elaborate Asian images started on him. And I tattooed both of them, and they go out and take acid and go to the baths and have a great San Francisco weekend. It was really, there were just so many people there. You know, I think back on it, and my memory of that is triggered because I photographed everything. I'm a real, you know, pack rat of documenting my work, and especially with tattoos, you want the photos because they're going to go away. But when I see the photos, I'll think, oh, that person and that story behind that tattoo, because that's what they're about. You know, there's something that relates to the person when they get them under those ideal circumstances with a good artist, and they have somebody that can interpret what they want. It's super personal, and to me, it's a celebration, and it's a memory marker of things we do in our lives. And you can't judge them. I mean, everybody's taste is different, of course. You walk into somebody's house and think, God, those paintings are awful. They might mean a lot to the person whose walls they're on. But with tattoos especially, you can't be judgmental about them because they're keys to an interior life that are somewhat made visible, you know. And I always think the old stories like the old pirate at the bar, and they say, well, I got that one in Barbados, you know. That's what they are. It's like, it is a fantastic, as Lyle Tuttle says, it's not always an art, but it's a practice, and it's a very, very difficult medium. And it's been wonderful for us.
Did he tell you that he thought that this was a medium that had some potential? So I heard him say that to one of the interviewers in New York, and I thought, yeah.
But in those days, I mean, Phil Sparrow tried to dissuade me the first time I was in his shop, and he showed me a book of Japanese tattoo art that had just come out. Actually, it was a book that was produced by a terrific Japanese photographer, and Donald Ritchie, the great, great interpreter of Japanese culture, who died last year. He's a phenomenal person, a great, great mentor to Francesca and myself. And mainly cinema. He brought Japanese cinema to the West. But this book Ritchie had done, these photos of tattoos, and I said, well, I'm an art student, and Phil said, oh, look at this, this is real art. And then as I became more obsessed, I started going back to a shop every day, and he's kind of saying, I might want to do this. And he said, oh, this is a dying art form. Come on, you're headed for grad school, you've got infant son, do your whole life. Don't get into this. He said, this is a deep, dark world. I went, yeah, but it's kind of interesting.
Do you want to take some questions?
Sure. Do you have any questions? Yes, in the back there.
I just had a question. I read something in a tattoo book recently where a tattooer, I forgot his name, but he had said that how the cells regenerate in our body every 7 years, and how it's a coincidence that the ink stays behind.
Yeah, I actually don't know why that is, because I think that is like a physiological fact. There is this regeneration. Now, it could have something to do with the fact that, I mean, tattoos really are just colored scars. It's planting pigment in the top of the dermal layer, and the cells close around that, and it doesn't stay, it's not inert in the sense that more skin grows over it, which is why older tattoos, you're seeing through a window of skin. It's also why you can put the same design on, say, 5 sailors in one night, and 20 years later, their ethnicity, their eating habits, the course of their lives, how much sun they got, they'll all appear. So it's just the luck of the draw. It is a living group that way. But I really don't know why that is. About you would think it would go away, but it would be pointless to go through getting them if you're going to lose it after a while.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
I have a question, actually 2 questions about your own collection on your own body.
Mm-hmm.
You are like a collector with a very small space to collect in.
Yes.
And with all you've seen, I don't know if you've had your tattoos redone or how you live with the fact that there are limits to how large your own collection can be.
Mm-hmm.
And my other question is, the colors look very fresh, and I wonder if you have had the colors redone.
No, I've never had any retouch. It's like, it's bad enough once. And but it was just an accident of, my mother was Swedish descent and my father was from England, and I had good skin for tattoos. And some people come in and think, oh, it's good skin, it's going to show the pigment well. And I had good artists do this work, and yeah, these things are old. This rosary was done by hand by Corte, the guy that I worked with in 1973. So that's been on there since 73. And I came back and decided to fill in this space, and Francesca pulled the skin, stretched the skin, and I put these waves around my wrist. It was also probably 74. So yeah, they held pretty well, but I haven't redone any of them. They just, they do look much different. Somebody, I was somewhere in New York, maybe at one of these interview things, or I think maybe in a radio station, and the woman said, oh, your tattoos are really, they're not as bright as the ones now. I said, well, they were 45 years ago.
I've got a follow-up question for you that's going to have a surprising answer. Ask him when he got his last tattoo.
When did you get your last tattoo?
I got my last tattoo last month because I finally got to go to Spain. I've been wanting to go to the Prado and go to Spain for 50 years. I'm obsessed with Corte and a lot of other painters there. And I met 2 young of the breed of tattooers now that are very common, happily, highly educated, deeply aesthetic guys, one from Barcelona, one from Madrid, at a tattoo convention in San Francisco last year. When I started talking to the Madrid tattooer, Deno, I said, oh, go ahead, Prado, and it turned out he knew all these pretty obscure Spanish abstract painters I'm nuts about. I said, if you ever come to Spain, I'd be an honor to show you around. So I did. I guess about a month and a half, and I spent a week there. And just on the spur of the moment, we were at his friend's place, John Dix in Barcelona, who's a Catalan guy that studied for 8 years to be an architect and got into tattooing. And we were there, and he had this incredible private studio. He was just really obsessed with Tibetan Buddhism and a lot of esoteric stuff. And I thought, man, it's time for a tattoo. I haven't had a tattoo in a long time. And my old friend Bob Roberts is a great LA tattooer and painter. We've known each other a long time. We used to work together. And Bob always says that having that clean skin is like money in the bank. And if you realize I need a tattoo, you've got a place to put it. And I caution a lot of these younger tattooers that are gung-ho, and this guy's 28, he's like, I'm almost done. And it's like, you might live to be kind of old, and this is obviously something that really, floats your boat, and you're going to maybe have an event that you want to put a tattoo in. And just don't be so, don't fill it all up. So yeah, I got a little Om sign from John Dix by my Humi duck. This is a Sailor Jerry design that my son put on my 50th birthday 18 years ago. And I thought, well, I've got space here, so I got this little Om, which is a very Indian style Om, more graphic. I've got Sanskrit mantras and stuff on me. And it kind of looks like a question mark, goes with the Humi duck. And then I got a little, you have to hold this.
Yeah.
I got it. I always thought about getting a dog tattoo. Francesca and I had boxers for years. And I had a space in the back, and Deno had a beautiful bulldog. And I used to tattoo, I had this space here. I got California. I got that when I came back from Japan in '73, because I was so glad to be back in California. But I got this bulldog, and Deno and I designed it together. He's got a beautiful bulldog at home. And I would often, I'd look in the mirror, and I was shaving every once in a while, and I didn't want to be solid, but I'd look at that and go, well, there's a spot that might. But there is something that's really, it's just fun because it's so irrational. My friend Mike Malone, who's a great, he was a Marin native guy who was a fantastic tattooer. My brother in the business introduced me to Francesca, wonderful person. He died a few years ago. And Malone used to say the tattoos, they're generally pretty damn useless, but every once in a while they come in handy. So it was fun. It was really, and also it's really fun to go, I'm just going to get a tattoo, and it's a little tattoo, and it doesn't take long, because when you get these epic things, it's definitely, they're not excruciating, because all these people walking around with all this thing, they're not superheroes, they're just folks. But a little one that you bing bang and it's done. It was really nice. It's part of that thrill. It's like first liberty, off the ship. Well, I get a tattoo. Yes.
So I'm interested in the myths around tattooing, because I got one, and but before I did, people told me the doctors say if you get it, then you can't have an X-ray, you can't have this, and you can't have that. And then plus I'm Jewish, and someone said, oh, you can't be tattooed. So it was like, I figured screw them, and I have one. But
That's a good attitude.
But I mean, is there anything to any of the myths in terms of health-wise having a tattoo?
No, as long as it's done under sterile conditions, and believe me, I've had more X-rays than it's no, that's fine. And and I think if you had to scan over all the ethnic groups that I've tattooed, elaborate tattoos, I've probably tattooed more Jewish people as clients with big tattoos, and most of them, they just felt the way you do, like, come on, it's my body, and I'm going to do it. But I've also been told, I'll tell you, it was interesting to me, because when this Ed Hardy Tattoo the World film was out, they got international distribution, and I did a bunch of phone interviews. I did a phone interview with a guy in Tel Aviv, and they got the film over there. The guy got on the phone, we're in the satellite hookup, and I said, he's a big fan, he knew all about me. This is before the book came out. And I said, are people tattooing in Israel? He said, there's about 30 shops in Tel Aviv. He had several, and I said, are you aware that in America, there generally, Jews in America, there's a real stigma about it. And he said, yeah, I've heard that, but we don't, and people have posited that it's possible, because of the camps and the enforced numbers on people, that maybe it gave it more of a bad rap here. And there's also something that's happened. There was actually an article in the Times, a few months ago. There are people, descendants of people that were in the camps, and as a solidarity with their now probably great grandparents, they're getting their number. Then they're not getting it decorated. There was a quote in there from some cop or something in Tel Aviv that said, this is terrible. He says, we're trying to forget that. And this young guy said, we're getting you so you don't forget. And I thought that was very interesting. So there's a lot of ways to look at it. But no, a lot of this, they're just, you know, myths. Yes?
Did you ever turn somebody away, somebody who wanted a tattoo where you somehow decided?
Oh yeah, many times,
Yeah.
many times, because a lot of people, you just have to protect them from themselves, and whether it's the obvious thing is drunks, you know, the thing we used to develop was, you just agree with them, you don't get in a fight, or, you know, you start arguing with somebody and they're in that mood, and I just say, oh great, I can fix you right up, and my sterilizer is gonna be done in 2 hours, just sit down, you know, that's when I had a street shop. And they go 2 hours, and that's why it's not, we always knew that it wasn't good to have the only tattoo shop in a town, because there are other tattoo shops, and especially if there's somebody pretty down the ladder with what they're doing, that not particularly a friend, they were like your trash can, and so this person would go over, well, you might try, you know, Morty's down the street there, so it was that, and then just requests for stuff, you know, racist stuff, totally negative stuff, and you just didn't do it, and people and we did not used to tattoo stuff that showed anywhere. I mean, especially when I was tattooing sailors and Marines in that in the 60s, early 70s, they couldn't have tattoos that showed, you know, on the hands or anything. Now that's all gone by the wayside, but I always did try to caution people about, you know, you really are going to have this forever, and it's a little hard to plan ahead, but you know, maybe you should reconsider that. So
Another question over there.
yes.
Do you know if they've developed a gun yet that produces an extremely fine line?
Yeah, extremely fine lines are done. In fact, you can do things that look like they're as fine as an engraving. This is a whole style that came along in the late 1970s of like single needle tattooing, and coming to this from an etching and engraving background, I was really interested in that, and you know, kind of a finesse with it, so it wouldn't be heavier lines. But you can do any effect with tattoos.
That,
What's that?
a line like that?
What?
Single
Oh yeah, sure, yeah.
That's fine, that's a fine line.
Yeah, no, yeah, I've got, I don't know, somewhere I have single needle work. I mean, this is done in East LA. This is just a dream portrait of a woman. That's been on there since, I don't know, 78, 79, and yeah, you can get extremely fine lines on there. If you go online and look this stuff up, there's any effect you can imagine being done in tattooing now. They will soften up a little bit with age, but you know.
Is there anybody locally that specializes in that that should be?
Well, you know, you could, I mean, my shop and the people there, if you go online and look at tattooCitySF.com, and there's portfolios for all those people, because they do any style. There's so many great tattooers everywhere that I can't even, I mean, that's just, I know those folks, and I know they're good people and do good work, but you can definitely get any effect.
Let's take one more question and sign some books.
Sounds good. Yes.
Has the ink changed over the years?
Yes, it has. Yeah, there's a much greater range of pigments. I think the stability has improved, and the machines themselves have become. It's still essentially the same thing, but they're much more, you know, developed than they were
What
when I
about,
started.
I thought there was lead in the ink, is that
No.
just a myth?
No, I think that's a myth. Yeah, nobody should. I think everything has to be tested out safe, and it's all health department approved.
Don't use house paint.
Yeah. Unless they're really hard to.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.